and welcome to my channel In Search of Wonder. My name is Anne and this is my weekly wrap-up. This is Saturday night and this is take 2 because I am hoping to get this uploaded and ready to be published live tomorrow morning when you are probably watching this. So this is going to be more or less unedited, hopefully, because I don't really have time to edit. And yeah, so let's get started talking about what I read and did not read this week, and also a little bit of a mid-month check-in, how I'm doing with my February goals and FebRegency, etc. So to start with, I read for Valentine's Day, Lucy and the Duke of Secrets, which is a Regency romance novel by Sofi LaPorte, who I've read a few by her. She writes kind of like rom-com Regency romances. And so it was, you know, a fun, pleasant to read, not anything particularly memorable, had some funny moments, and the characters were fun, and the story was fun. It was just, you know, a fun read, but nothing like amazing or anything. So this is the cover, Lucy and the Duke of Secrets, and it's from a series called the Wishing Well series, which is 4 different girls, I think, who are friends at a boarding school in the Regency era, and there's an incident involving a well and dropping coins in the well, etc. The girl in our story, Lucy, she has a bit of a checkered past, so to speak, in that, you know, where she comes from and how she was raised, etc. And as the story begins, she is going to visit an old school friend in the hopes that she and her brother can help her, Lucy, get back on her feet. And the story goes from there, with a lot of interesting characters in it, and it's just a fun story, but nothing like amazing, but it was a great palate cleanser and it was fun to read at Valentine's Day. And then I read Lily of Ludgate Hill, The Lily of Ludgate Hill, together as a buddy read with Mimi Matthews, and that one I love that one. So Mimi Matthews is one of my favorite romance authors. She writes mostly, well, only as far as I know, Victorian era. I think she may have a couple Regency books. Victorian era romance novels. And what I like most about her, and this story is a good example of that, this book, which is her most recent book, and it's the 3rd in her Bells of London series, and it was published in January. And I love how she has complex characters and depth to the story, but it's still just a wonderful romance, a swoony romance that draws you in and keeps you interested, and it's, you know, a page turner, but it's not just a light and fluffy read like, you know, Lucy and the Duke of Secrets was. It's got some depth to it, and I also love how she, I don't think in every book she does this, but in a lot of her series, what she does is she will have overlapping storylines from one book to the other. And so there will be scenes that you get multiple points of view and perspectives on. So the scene will happen in this book, in this series, from this person's perspective and the things that are going on in their life. But then in the next book, you will get the same scene, but from a different character's perspective. And that's really cool. And there are other things that she does in her writing that are just really clever. One thing I really liked in this story, and this in the whole series as a whole, but particularly in this book, it kind of came to the forefront, and that is the way she used fashion to help tell the story. She wasn't just describing what the characters were wearing. There was a purpose in what the characters were wearing and the way that she was comparing and contrasting and kind of telling the story that was happening in those characters' lives. So that was really a clever thing that she did. I really loved the hero in this story, Felix Hartford. Mimi and I were talking about how he's the perfect blend of like Mr. Knightley, Emma's longtime friend, childhood friend from Emma, and Gilbert Blythe from the Anne of Green Gables series. And he's just so constant and faithful, like Mr. Knightley, and also like Gilbert, and always speaking truth. Like he's never going to back away from the truth with Anne, who is the heroine of the story. He's not afraid to like tell her like it is. Gilbert is like this too. He's not afraid to tell her what he sees and issues that she's having. But always loving constantly and faithfully, even when the girl in this story in particular, I'm thinking this relates to Anne of Green Gables. Oh, I think my coffee is arriving. Are you coming? Thank you. What service? You don't want to come smile? No. Coffee delivery. Anyways, so in particular, this reminded me of Gilbert and Anne's relationship, which was very often antagonistic for much of the story. And this was a very similar thing with some differences. I'll get to that in a second. But also what reminded me about Gilbert in Felix Hartford, the character in The Lily of Ludgate Hill, is that Gilbert was fun loving, and he liked to provoke Anne, but he was also, you know, just fun loving. And Felix Hartford is like that. He has that, he's faithful and constant and selfless in his relationship with Anne, and he speaks to her, he speaks truth to her, and he's always honest with her. But he's not stodgy or self-righteous or boring at all. He is interesting and charming and funny. So basically like the perfect blend of everything. He's a great hero. So my favorite part of the story by far was his character. And both Felix and Anne, our characters in the story, have a lot of things they're going through in their personal lives and in their families that they're having to work through. Plus, between the two of them, they have a lot of hurt and resentment from things that happened in the past between them, and they have to work through it. And what I love is that Matthews deals with all of this in a very in an appropriate way. Nothing is glossed over, and nothing magically happens to resolve the issues. They just work through them like normal people, one conversation at a time, one incident at a time, one fight at a time. And by gradually trusting each other more and asking forgiveness and giving forgiveness and talking about things, putting things out in the light, letting things come to light. So it's really the best way to do like an enemies to lover kind of trope, or not even just enemies to lover, but like people with a past who have a history with each other that they have to overcome. There were a couple of things that I disliked. I find this to be often true in Mimi Matthews' books, but also other secular authors that I've not even just secular, just modern authors in general. I find very often there's this, I don't know if the authors feel a need to do it to appease their audience, their readership, or if they just, if the issues are that important to them as authors, so they have to include them in their story. But it's almost like they want to make it doubly sure that they don't write the romance in any way that would offend modern sensibilities as to how a relationship should progress. And it's fine. Like, I guess specifically in this particular book, there were a lot of conversations and incidents, not a lot, but several conversations between the two characters and incidents that were specifically described so as to make it very clear that Anne, as a woman in the story, you know, she's disadvantaged, etc., just because she's a woman. But in this relationship with Felix, he's such a great hero that he's not putting her down in any way, and they're on equal footing. And you know, there's certain times he says things and then she says things, and then they almost like backtrack it a little bit to make it more in line with, you know, an egalitarian view of male-female relationships, etc. And it just kind of got in the way of the story a little bit. It was like pressed onto the story rather than just naturally flowing through the story, which would have been a lot more palatable. It's like it had to be inserted artificially rather than just happening. So that took a little bit out of the story for me, but so I wouldn't give it 5 stars for that reason. And I have to say, I find that happens, like I said, in books written in current times. There seems to be this need that we have to clarify that, you know, as a romance is developing, we have to clarify the footing and the standing of each partner in the relationship with each other, and just clarify so as we don't offend any modern sensibilities as to, you know, how a relationship is progressing and how they are equal to each other, etc. And then the other thing is that our hero, there is part of the story is his financial dealings and his business dealings and stuff, and some of it just got a little bit, it's not very detailed, but it got a little bit too detailed for me. I just found it a little bit boring, and some aspects of it was interesting, but like board meetings and that kind of thing, not my cup of tea. So I skimmed through some of that, enough that I got the gist of what was going on, but I didn't read all those details. So 4.5 stars for me. Great book. I loved it. I loved reading it with Miriam from Miriam Elizabeth Reads, and sharing our ideas back and forth. As I'm filming this, she's not quite finished, so we haven't like fully discussed everything. So I won't say any more, but both of us have really enjoyed the book, and both of us agree that this is or will be our favorite in this series, more than likely. For me, maybe my favorite Mimi Matthews book that I've read. So then I bring us to this one. Patrick O'Brien, Master and Commander is the name of the book, which this was to fulfill a prompt in FebRegency to read a book set at sea, or with like a naval hero or whatever. And that's why I read it, and I've been wanting to read it. It's been on my radar for a while, but I need you to tell me, should I continue or not? Here's why I paused it and set it aside. It's written from the main character's point of view, who is a male, Jack Aubrey, I believe, and he becomes a captain in the British Navy, and he gets a ship. And there are 2 things that I'm disliking, other things that I really like. I'm loving the setting of it, and the writing is good, but there are 2 things I'm disliking. One, it's written from a red-blooded male perspective, and there is a lot of gazing at female bosoms and liaisons and relationships with women, including women who are married, etc. Not loving that. I'm only like in the first chapter. They're really long chapters, but I'm only in the first chapter. Not loving that. Secondly, there is a lot, and of course, because, you know, he's the commander of a ship, there is a lot of talk about technical nautical stuff and ships and things. And he's not even like sailing the ship yet. He's just been given command. And anyway, there's just a lot of technical jargon and details about that sort of thing that nautical things just don't interest me. I don't know. So should I press forward and continue? Those of you who have read it, please tell me yes or no. Will I regret not finishing it, or should I DNF it? Like I said, there were other aspects of the story that were interesting to me, some of the characters and things that were happening, and I want to find out, is he going to have success in his career, etc. But I don't know if I can deal with all of the other things. So tell me. Since I pressed pause on that one, I still wanted to read a book for that FebRegency prompt. So I checked out a digital Horatio Hornblower book from the library, and did not realize until I read it that it was actually more like a short story. I don't think it was even novella length. It was like a short story. Horatio and His Majesty, I think it was. And my library didn't have any other readily available books in that series. So I wasn't able to get my hands on one at that time that I was reading it. So, but I did read that for the prompt, and I found it interesting. C.S. Forrester, I think is the author's name. It was about King George III and Horatio Hornblower and King George III comes onto his ship for a cruise down the channel. I think they're on the channel. And then there's like an enemy ship, which ends up being an American ship in the channel. And it's all about how he has to keep the king safe, but without engaging the enemy, because he doesn't want the king to be there while they're in battle. And, you know, the king is mentally unwell. And so there's a little bit of that in the story. So all very interesting. Short little story. I was intrigued by the fact that this was written by a British author, but I felt like the sentiments that Horatio Hornblower was expressing, there was a definite sympathy towards the American side of things in the War of 1812, which kind of surprised me. So I'm curious. If you're a British person, was I reading that wrong? Is that normal? I don't know. Anyways, I just found it intriguing. So I read that to fit the prompt. So even if I don't finish this one, I at least have finished the prompt for the challenge. So I like to check off those boxes. And then I haven't completed anything else, but I wanted to do a mid-month check-in where I stand on all of my reading challenges and everything that I am doing this month. So for FebRegency, I have read 2 books set in Regency, in the Regency era, just historical fiction, both just short, easy, fluff reads. One I talked about in my weekly wrap-up last week, Miss Newberry's List, and then this week I read Lucy, so Lucy the Duke or whatever, and then that was for Christie's challenge, Dostoevsky in Space, and then for Miss Richards Reed's challenge to read a new to me author from the Regency era, I read The Vicar of Wakefield by Oliver Goldsmith, and I also talked about that last week already. And then Tristan in the Classics, his prompt was to engage in a pastime common in the Regency era. Mine is to write letters, and I haven't done it yet, but I will. And then there was the naval challenge to read a book set in the naval time. So I have 3/4 of those challenges checked off. And then for my online book club that I am a part of, we're supposed to read some romantic poetry, which ties in perfectly with FebRegency. And I've read some. As I mentioned in my FebRegency tag this past week, I've read a smattering, like a lot of different poems from the Regency era, and a few poems, like, a handful of poems by each poet that's, famous, like Lord Byron, etc. But I've not really dug into any of the poets of that time to know if I like them or not. So I would really like to do that with one of them. I'm thinking Robert Burns. And I was trying to look in my library to see if they had like an annotated one. They don't have one available digitally. But if they had like a hard copy, like of annotated poetry, I would really like to read that. But my library system was down and they're closed. They were closed today because of snow, which was silly, but anyways, and they're closed on Monday for President's Day. So, I'm hoping I can get onto their catalog over the weekend and reserve a book and pick it up, and read some poetry. But I have read, there was one particular poem that we were supposed to read that I've already read by Robert Burns, but I would like to read some more. And then, for the Read Your Shelf challenge, I was supposed to read a book fewer than 250 pages, and oh, I don't have it with me, but I'm reading Gentle and Lowly. So many tabs, so many highlights, loving it. I've already mentioned that in my last week's. I'm halfway through, and we'll definitely finish that by the end of February, so on track with that. And then for the Tea and Ink Society reading challenge, I'm participating in a classics reading challenge. I am supposed to read a Nordic or Scandinavian classic, and I chose The Summer Book by Tove Jansson, and really enjoying it. I got a notification from the library this morning that it's due in 3 days and I can't renew it. So apparently someone has a hold on it. So I was like, oh, I better read that. I was going to save it for next week, but I was like, oh, I better read that. So, but it's a quick, easy read. I'm already 25% of the way through and I just started it earlier today. And each chapter is just like a little vignette of life on this island off the coast of Finland. In the summer, a girl and her grandmother, with occasional mentions of her father, they live on the island. And there's a lot of nature. It's beautifully, just gorgeously described here. And the relationship between the girl and her grandmother is just so beautifully illustrated in the little snippets that you see of their day-to-day life and the things that they experience. It's not written like a consecutive story. It's just like little snapshots, little pictures and images. And I know that the author lived on an island such as that for much of her life. So I think there's a lot of, I don't know if it's autobiographical, but she's definitely drawing a lot from her personal experience. And you can tell that in the descriptions that she writes. And I'm really enjoying it. It's kind of like poetry in prose. It's not written as poetry, but the prose is, it's like poetry. So it's been really enjoyable. It's very summery. It was kind of interesting, the juxtaposition of reading this as we were driving, and on either side of me were snow-covered fields and snow-covered trees and a very wintry setting, but I was enjoying reading this book about summer nonetheless. And then I am continuing the buddy read with Taylor from Tales and Treats with Tay. We are reading The Letter Tree. I paused it for a little bit this week because she had some things going on and she wasn't able to read it, and so I didn't want to get too far ahead, but I'm going to pick this back up again and finish this quickly. I am enjoying it for the most part, like 95% enjoying it. It's really good. I only have tiny quibbles with it, which I will talk more about it after I have finished reading it and Taylor has finished reading it and we've been able to compare notes. Maybe next weekend in my wrap up. I'll talk a little bit more about that. And then with the Protagonist Pub Book Club, we are reading Baron and Luthien by J.R. Tolkien. And I have actually gotten to the story part this time, the story, and not just all of the forward material. I'm really loving the character. She's currently clubbed to Nuviel in the story. She goes by different names. Luthien and Nuviel are the same, I believe, person. And I'm really loving her character. She's strong and she's courageous, but she's a sweet and good person. And there is a part of the story where there's like a kind of a Rapunzel-like situation where she is stuck in like a tower sort of thing, and but she is no Rapunzel content to sit there forever and wait for someone to rescue her. No, she manages to effect her own rescue. And I jokingly said in the book club that, oh, here's Gentle and Lily. Anyway, I jokingly said that she was the brunette version of Rapunzel. So no offense to any blondes. Anyways. Okay, so then we have And the Dead Shall Rise, which is not for any challenge. It's just for me reading because I want to read it. And I have not made much progress on this week. So I have been just having too much fun reading more fiction than nonfiction. So I will make an effort to read more of that this week. So I have a lot in progress, like 5 things, which is ridiculous. But hoping to finish up most of them this coming week. And then I will have knocked off all of my February goals. And then smooth sailing from then on out. So that was my week. And I hope you had a great week. I hope you have a great week coming up. Let me know what you are reading and what you are enjoying in the comments below. And your thoughts on any of the books that I've shared. If you've read them, please tell me, should I continue Master and Commander or just give that a hard DNF and not read it? And should I read any of the full-length Horatio Hornblower novels? I have to say, between the two of them, though Horatio Hornblower I was enjoying much more. It was much more of a fun read. Master and Commander was interesting as far as it went, but Horatio Hornblower was more of a fun read. So let me know, and I look forward to talking with you in the comments, and I will see you next time. Bye.